Hey there, it's Jacques from Epic Gardening, and today I want to talk to you guys about how to install the bracing kit and what's the easiest way to install the bracing kit in your Birdies bed. So in this bed right here is actually the tall 8-in-1 bed. This is the most standard configuration, the most popular configuration. So it's a good example to show you guys. The first thing I want to actually mention probably is that when you're installing the bracing kits, it should be the third hole from the top and then the third hole from the bottom. So those are the gaps you want to leave. The other thing you'll probably notice is that this bed is not fully secure right here. So I did that on purpose. These bolts and nuts right here are not bottomed out. They're just loosely hand tightened. And the reason I do that is that it gives me a little bit of wiggle room so that if I'm on an uneven surface like I am right now in the garden space, I could actually move the panels around a little bit to get these threaded rods in easier. So the first thing I like to do is I take the coupling nut and the two threaded rods, in this case it's the longer threaded rods, and I'll screw in the coupling nut until it's about roughly halfway. So I'll do that, take a look, a little bit more. So that's about halfway, and then I'm going to take the other threaded rod, I'm going to join it on. When you do this, you want to make sure that it's actually bottomed out. So these two rods are touching in the middle of this coupling nut, there's no extra slack. That's how you make sure that the rod is the right length. Now the next thing I like to do is I will actually come in from the inside, not the outside, and push it through one side and then force it through the other. So in this case, I could see that since these are nice and loose, the holes are lined up nicely. If you notice that the holes are not perfectly aligned, what you could actually do is, like I said, leave this panel loose, and if you just grab the ridges and pick it up, or even just pick it up a little bit, you could actually shift the panels a little bit and make sure that those holes are as lined up as they can be. So we did make the holes a little bit smaller, and that's so that these nut flanges can actually grab onto the bed and not twerk in any weird ways. Due to that change, you want to make sure that the holes are as lined up as possible so your threaded rod fits nicely. So I'm going to go in from here, and what I like to do is I actually like to kind of spin it. So I'm grabbing the rod itself and I'm spinning it as if I'm screwing something in. As you do that, the threads on the rod itself are actually spinning through that hole. And now I have about 1/2 inch on this side. And you'll see it on the other side as I do it here. But same idea. So you can see there are the holes. They're pretty lined up. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing right here while I'm spinning the rod with my other hand. So you can see it's advancing nicely. And the reason you'd rather do that rather than trying to force it through is that if you force it through, you can chip the paint. It's a little more likely. I've forced them through and I've never seen the paint chip, but I can imagine that being an issue. So the next thing I'm going to grab are the acorn nut and the washer. So there's the washer. You want to put that on first. And then you take your acorn nut. And again, this is something you want to bottom out entirely. So I'm going to put it on. And make sure you're not cross-threaded. There we go. I'm going to keep screwing that until it stops and I can't force it on anymore. So that's the optimal amount of stick out. You don't really need it to stick out any further than just the acorn nut itself. So now I'm going to get my other washer and acorn nut and do it on this side. So as I did that one, this one pulled in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to push on this panel here while I spin this rod so that I have enough stick out. And you could hear that. That sound is the bed actually trying to push out a little bit because these panels are loose. There's a little bit of slack there. Now, just to demonstrate, I will try to force this out. So this is what you'll see if it's not fully seated. So what's happening here is I could put probably 3 fingers here, and that's how much this actual threaded rod is sticking out from the bed. Before you actually fill your bed, the best practice is to come in and go like this. So now what you'll see is that this washer is bottomed out with the bed. This is the way you want it before you fill. It's going to be a lot harder to get it properly seated when it's already full. But if you set it up like this to begin with and then fill it in, the soil will naturally keep it in that position. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate and do the next one. And we could install the second bracing kit on the third from the bottom hole. So again, I'm going to come in from the inside, and then I'm going to spin the rod with my hands to get it to engage and actually push through. So let's take a look. I'm gonna start on this side too while I'm here. So there it is, it's just starting to peek out. And now I'm gonna just spin it by hand. And there it is. So again, it's a lot easier if you use your hand to just spin it. If you try to force it through, it tends to be a little more difficult. So just think of it as if you're just literally screwing something in that's already threaded. So I'm gonna take my washer and then the acorn nut, and then I'm going to bottom this out. When I say bottom out, I'm referring to the fact that as I screw it, at some point, I literally can't screw it anymore because I've hit the bottom of this acorn nut. So same deal over here. I like to screw in the acorn nut on one side first, that way I can't lose that threaded rod position. You could push on the bed a little bit to help the thread come through faster. And there it is. Washer and the acorn nut. All right, so that's the bracing kit installed. The next thing you want to remember to do is actually come back and tighten these bolts. Again, I left them a little bit loose on purpose so that there is that ability to wiggle, so that if you're on an uneven surface like this, it's much easier to get those threaded rods through. And again, the beauty of these beds is that once they're fully built like this, you can pick them up, take them wherever you want, set them there. But when you do, make sure that this washer is flush with the bed. And again, you could do that by just coming in and just pushing it out as best you can, and then that's when you want to fill. And that's how you install the bracing kit in your Birdies bed.